Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here every Monday and Friday working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today I'm going to tell you about this crazy lady who owns not one, not two, but three grain mills, and why. But I want to make sure right up front that you know about the amazingness going on right now. If you are catching this episode when it releases or soon after, through April 2nd, you can enter daily for the amazing Real Ingredients gift away. And there's over $3,200 worth of amazing products, all of which are some of my favorite items, all of which either have real ingredients or help you make real food with real ingredients. And guess what, guys? There's a grain mill being given away. Go check out solelyrested.com/free, FREE, and enter today. Don't wait. In fact, pause this episode right now because this crazy lady will still be here ready to talk about mills when you come back. So pause the episode and go pull up solely, SOULY, rested.com/free and enter. Trust me, it will take you 30 seconds and you'll be glad you did. So it's been a crazy week. Fun, but crazy. It's been a crazy sugar season too. Weather's been really bad here in New Hampshire for sugaring. The season started too early, so we didn't tap early enough. And then it turned crazy warm and we thought, well, there's no reason to tap now. It was like crazy warm temperatures. It wasn't even getting to freezing at night. And then it turned really, really cold, which is the spot we're in right now. And we have made only a third, maybe a quarter of the amount of syrup that we typically would by this time in the year. So that part's crazy. But a good crazy thing that happened, I just got to tell you guys this, and then we really will talk grain mills. I got a message on Instagram, and I often get, not often, a few times a week, I get like a spammy, weird message on Instagram. You guys probably all get that too. And I just ignore it. I delete it or I mark it as spam or whatever. But I almost thought this message was like those crazy messages, because he was claiming to be a Fox reporter and wanting to interview me as an expert for an article that was going out nationwide the following morning. And I guess because it was such an urgent thing is another reason I was like, that's not legit. But I read it again and I looked up his profile and I realized he was actually legit. So I reached out and I had quite a great interview with the reporter for Fox News, and they released the article, sure enough, at 10 a.m. the following morning. So just this week, an article went out across the nation claiming or explaining, or what's the word I want to use? Revealing? It's not the word I wanted to use either, but the amazingness of maple cream. Now, I couldn't convince the reporter that it really needs to be called maple cream. He really wanted to call it maple butter. My guess is it has a better SEO and people search that more, is my guess. SEO stands for search engine optimization. I told him it's not maple butter. Maple butter's different. It's really maple cream, but he went with maple butter. But that's okay. I'll forgive him because both are good. And it's proclaiming the amazingness of my personal favorite form of maple syrup. So if you want to read this article, it's a fun article. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, or you can just go to solelyrested.com and search maple cream. And I link to it there. I also give you the directions on how to make this amazingness. Guys, it is so good. So you know what? You really do need to just go look it up. You really do. solelyrested.com and search for maple cream. Okay, so why does this crazy lady, aka moi, have three grain mills? Well, when you love something, you have multiple versions of it, right? Okay. I honestly will tell you that I will stand on a soapbox from now until the day they put me in the grave. I will stand on the soapbox that fresh flour is superior and that the crappy enriched flour that all of us have been eating our whole lives is most likely linked, if not the main source, of a whole lot of problems our nation is facing health wise. Even if I'm wrong about that last fact, it's a dead flour. It has zero nutrients. It has nothing good for you. They call it enriched because they add in some things, but none of it occurs naturally. And they've taken all the good stuff out. We talked about this in a previous episode, so I won't go into more detail on that. But um, suffice it to say, Michelle has a fascination with fresh flour for sure. But I don't need 3 grain mills. One would suffice. I will admit that. So, how did I come across 3? Let's start there. Okay. When I first, I don't remember honestly why I first even thought about, I don't know, getting a grain mill this recent time in my life. But I can't remember why, but I reached out to Nutrimil because I knew that they had this really, really pretty mill. And I knew I wanted it to look pretty in my kitchen. And I asked them if they might consider sending me a mill and if we could work together. That's not uncommon in what I do, that companies actually want to send me products sometimes and they expect nothing in return, just to hope that, oh, if she likes it, moving forward, we'll work together. Maybe they'll do a podcast sponsorship, or maybe there's lots of other things that we can do to work together. So that's not uncommon. And I will tell you, I've gotten plenty of things from companies that I've never once told anybody about because they were lousy. And I literally put some of them in the dump room at our local dump or gave them away to somebody who might want it. But so you don't hear about the stuff that I don't like, but when something clicks and I wind up loving it, I really enjoy working with that company typically. So they said, sure. And they sent me a harvest mill. And I just kind of used it half-heartedly. And I can't even tell you why. I really can't, except there was something about it that wasn't working correctly, but it was my very first mill I ever owned. And I had no idea. And I thought it was me. And that the flour was just kind of not really fine. And I bet you I went a year like that, which is kind of using it a little bit, just kind of putting a little bit of fresh flour and mainly store-bought flour and things I was baking. Looking back, I want to shake myself. I have no idea what I was thinking, but I guess it wasn't a priority to me. And I just thought, I'll figure it out eventually. I don't know. So after maybe a year or so, I reached out and I said, something I think isn't working quite right. And I don't know what it could be. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be putting out great flour. Well, they were very sweet. They didn't say, why the heck did you wait a whole year to tell us? Or they didn't doubt me or question if I was crazy, that surely the machine should work. They actually just said, box it up, ship it to us. We'll check it out and we'll send you another one. So they did that. And then I don't know if it's because the new manual was a nicer manual and I read it more closely and I got more comfortable more quickly with the mill, or if the first one really did have a little snafu and something wasn't working right. I don't know. But the second one definitely worked better. But I still wasn't really, I don't know. I wasn't really all on board, I guess. And it just kind of hung out there on my counter and I used it a little bit. And then they were having a special. I got to know the lady who works with influencers pretty well. And they were having a special on both of their grain mills. They have a classic, which is this white plastic exterior mill. And they have the harvest, which is this gorgeous wooden bamboo, really pretty mill. There's a lot of differences between the two. I'm not going to go into the depth of the differences in the 3 mills that I'm going to tell you about today, because that would require me pulling up some notes and looking at some details, because I don't have that stuff memorized, what the difference is with the speed or the way the mills work. But what I do have for you is a complete in-depth article all about these 3 mills. So here on the podcast today, you're going to just kind of get me chatting about my thoughts about these different mills and why I like or don't like each one. But I'm not going to get into, like I said, the technical side. The article is going to give you more of that side, more of the comparison, breaking down the differences kind of thing. So after you listen to this episode, if you want to know more details, if you think you might be in the market for a mill and you really do want to know which one's the best one for you, um, I'm guessing that my rambling today might not totally nail that down for you, or it might. It might. Or you might want to go see more details. So I will link that in-depth article in the show notes, or you can simply go to solelyrested.com/flour, FLOUR. The article will be linked there. You also can sign up there for my totally free e-course. If you want to know more about fresh flour, definitely go solelyrested.com/flour, FLOUR. Okay. So Lauren at this point from Nutrimill says, we're having a sale coming up. I would love for you to show your audience both of the mills and explain that they're both on sale. I know you have the Harvest. Could I send you the Classic? And I honestly, for a slight second, just hesitated because I knew I didn't want a mill that couldn't sit on my counter. And not that it couldn't sit on my counter, but I just knew I didn't want that look sitting on my counter. I live in an old farmhouse and I just didn't want the big white machine sitting there. Plus, all my other things are black. So I just knew I didn't want this white machine on my counter, right? So I, for a split second or two, kind of hesitated, like, thank you, that's awesome. But no, I'll just mention it to people that they can, look at that option too. But then I thought, you know what? I have three. No, why did I say three? I have four daughters. And I guess because I figured one of them probably wouldn't want it. And they might want a grain mill. So once, I try it out and tell my followers about the sale, maybe I could give it to a daughter. Lauren wouldn't care. That'd be fine. So I said, okay, send it over. I was pretty surprised how much I wound up liking the Classic mill. I'm trying to think if I want to tell you about my third mill right now, but no, I'm going to hold that for later. Right now, I'm going to explain to you the difference between these two. Okay. So I liked the Classic, which is that white big one, because for some reason, and I don't know the mechanical engineering reason why, but the flour that results from the Classic mill, which is, by the way, definitely the cheapest option of the three that I'm going to tell you about today. The flour is fantastic that comes out of there. It comes out so fine. And I seemed to get better results with some of my more finicky baking that I was trying to do with all fresh flour. Because now I'm starting to get to that point in my history that I'm starting to go, you know what? I kind of want to do this more. I want to do more fresh flour. So I was experimenting with either increasing the percentage of fresh flour versus store-bought that I was using in a recipe, or some recipes I was experimenting with doing all fresh flour. And I did find that with the Harvest flour, I just didn't have as good of results, the flour coming out of the Harvest mill, which is that bamboo wooden one, as I did with the Classic, which kind of surprised me because I really didn't want the Classic, right? And it was definitely the cheapest option to purchase. So I was surprised that the results it was giving me were, in my opinion, better. I was very impressed. But here's what I don't like about the Classic, other than what I already told you. It has different parts to it. You don't just put a bowl underneath the spout, hit a button, and get your flour. You have to put the parts together just right. More than once, I have not had the parts together just right, and poofs of flour have come out and exploded around my kitchen. Now, that is a user error, and I should have learned the first time. I think I now have learned. I don't think I'll ever let that happen again, but it did happen to me twice. And it's kind of a pain to finagle the bowl in just right. There'll be pictures of all of these, by the way, at the article that I'll link. You also could just Google mill grain mill over at soullyrested.com. Because I know it's kind of a pain to go to the show notes sometimes. So there'll be pictures there, and I think you'll understand this more. I literally thought about doing a show and tell and bringing my 3 mills into my office and kind of pulling them out during the podcast. But then I thought, first of all, much larger percentage of you listen instead of watching over on YouTube, which I get it. I am definitely one who listens to a podcast. It has been very seldom that I have ever gone and watched a podcast. So I get it. So that's the one reason I didn't really want to bring my mills in and do a show and tell. And second of all, my office, you can't tell from what you can see if you are on YouTube, but let me just explain it to you. It is a tiny little narrow hall that connects the main part of our house to our master bedroom. And it literally is a hallway that the previous owners installed a built-in, very small desk area and a built-in small cabinet area on the other side. So you walk between the small desk and the small built-in cabinet to get between the master bedroom and the rest of the farmhouse. And that's the size of it. So I would barely have room to even bring 3 mills in here. So we're not doing show and tell. I have to pause this episode for just a minute to let you know about our sponsor. I am in love with this company. I've been using them for years for teas, and now I go to them all the time for botanicals. Positivelybotanicals.com. A botanical is a plant or a plant part that's valued for its medicinal or therapeutic properties. There are many things that you can do with them, like people will make tinctures and infusions and extracts, and I do a little bit of that. But what I really love the most for using my botanicals is to make teas, to make medicinal, delicious teas, and I drink them iced or warm. If you want to go to soullyrested.com/botanicals, there I give you a savings code for Positively Botanicals, and I link to all my absolute favorite things that I get from them. And this is the best part, I link to all my different recipes of my absolute favorite teas, and some of them have proven to be favorites of you guys as well. I hear from folks often about how these have become their new favorite drinks. So go to soullyrested.com/botanicals to find out more, and absolutely be sure to go check out our sponsor, positivelybotanicals.com. And where was I? So the classic, it's just kind of a pain for me. I don't know why. I'm not a technical person. And if I was, like, if I had the brain of a mechanic like my husband Bill does, I'm certain I would have no trouble getting the parts together just right every time like that. But I'm not, and I do. What else? I kind of hate having all the things to wash, and it's not even that bad. It's kind of pathetic for me to say this as I think about it. The things that you have to wash on the classic mill are the bowl that holds your flour when it comes out of the machine, and the lid that goes on the bowl. And then there's a little circle, probably about an inch in diameter, that's a filter piece that goes in the lid. So a tiny little filter, a lid, and a bowl. That's it. It's not like a lot, but there's also a seal on the lid. So you want to make sure it dries well. So you can't just like wash it and quickly put it all back away because you want it to be really dry. So I let it air dry before I put it away. And on top of that, the other thing I'm not crazy about with the classic, these are all little nitpicky things, by the way, but the lid, I struggle with getting it off sometimes. Now, the secret to that is that you take some flour and put it around the rim of the seal of the lid before you put it together and put it away. Or you also could put it away without putting the lid on the bowl. That's another option. But the times that I forget to put a little bit of flour around the rim and I put it all the way, sometimes I have trouble getting that lid back off because it's a really snug fit. And it kind of bugs me that I'm sitting there struggling, like, oh, I can't get the lid off. So those are the only negative things I can think of. And that I have to move it out of my kitchen and store it in the back hall and then go get it and bring it to my kitchen when I want to use it. The positives to the classic mill, I've already said one, it really does a fantastic job. You know what? There is one more negative before I go into the positives. You can't put your flour back through it. So if you're not pleased with the fineness of it, you just need to use it. Whereas the other two mills I'm going to talk about, you can put your flour back through, feed it in again, and get a finer result. I think that's all the negatives. The positives are the better quality, fineness of flour, and the price point for sure. It is by far the lowest price point. And I'm really pleased with the company and the results I've gotten whenever I had to call with any problems or needed something replaced or had a question about how something worked. They have good customer service. And I've heard that from other people as well. So that can be pretty important if you're investing a good amount into a piece of equipment. You want to have good customer service. Is that everything? Oh, it's great for a large batch of flour. So there's really one big thing you need to consider. If you're looking at buying a grain mill, one big thing to consider is, do you want to grind your flour on demand, just the amount that you need when you need it? Or do you want to do a large batch of flour at a time? And then it's more like traditional, like you're already used to when you're getting your 5-pound bag from the store, that you're not using it all at once, and you store it and you pull it out and get some more when you want it. So if that's kind of the way you want to keep doing things, honestly, the classic mill is the one for you. It is amazing at doing a big bulk amount of flour, and that flour will keep for at least a month. You can just keep it in a sealed container in your kitchen cabinet. Or if you really want to maintain the most nutrients possible, you can also store it in the refrigerator if you have room to do so. So if that's kind of the mentality you want to have towards your flour, I highly recommend the classic mill. The harvest mill, on the other hand, does not do a large batch as far as set it and walk away. But both the harvest and the third one I'm going to tell you about in a minute have a bowl on the top where you feed your grains. So you can fill up that bowl and you can get a good amount of flour. Probably, I should know this, but I don't. Maybe 6 or 7 no, more than that, maybe 10 cups of flour when you fill up that bowl on the harvest with with your wheat berries. But don't quote me on that because I'm just guessing. But the thing is, you can just keep feeding it in. So if you don't want to set it, walk away for 10 minutes and come back to your flour, if you're going to be nearby in the kitchen while it's milling, you can easily just pour more wheat berries in to get whatever amount of flour that you want. So that's, in my mind, really not a big deal that it doesn't have a large bowl, because I want it on my counter and I don't want it to be a huge machine, right? What I really like about the harvest is it is a flour on demand kind of machine. So I can grind what I want when I want it. I don't have to have extra flour sitting around, and I'm getting the absolute most nutritional value that I can with my flour, because the minute I'm grinding it, I'm using it. So it has the highest amount of nutrition in the flour. I guess there's a slight negative to this in the sense that it's seldom that I put the exact amount of wheat berries in to produce the exact amount of flour that I want, but I get really darn close every time. It's pretty amazing how you get used to it and you can quickly judge it to get the right amount of flour that you want. But more likely than not, I'm not going to nail it perfectly. And there's going to be a few tablespoons or maybe even a cup of extra flour at the end. So you do have a little bit that you have to deal with, and you have a couple choices. And I change up what I'm doing depending on my mood and depending on what kind of flour I just made too. But I often will have a jar of just random flours. I like using a lot of different wheat berries, a lot of different flours for what I'm baking. So I sometimes will just toss them all in, a tablespoon of this, quarter cup of that, into a jar on my counter that I use to feed my sourdough starter. But I also have a couple containers that I keep in my fridge of the flours I use the most. But I don't like that option really. And I'm trying to wean myself away from it because I forget they're in there. So let's say I had an extra cup of hard white wheat berry or flour. I put that in my fridge, and then I go to make bread the next day, and I know I need 3 cups of flour. So I put the right amount of wheat berries in and I move on with making my bread. And then I go, shoot, I had an extra cup yesterday that I put in the fridge, right? But I didn't think about it because it was out of sight and I didn't use it. So that will happen again and again. And finally I'll remember, oh, I have flour to use. So I'm trying to, I haven't decided if maybe I'll have like 3 jars on my counter, the mix match for my feeding my sourdough, and maybe a hard and a soft jar, because I really don't mind mixing my softs or my hards. So that might be what I wind up doing, honestly. So I don't forget that they're in the fridge. Well, I guess I'll have 4 jars on my, see, that's the problem. It's too many jars because I also always have rice flour. I use rice to clean out the mill. And then I use the flour that results from that to do the dusting of my food, whatever I'm making. You know how you have to dust the counter or add a little flour sometimes if it's sticky? Rice flour works great for that. So I really don't want 4 jars on my counter. So you see my dilemma, right? The other good things about the Harvest, it's a stone mill, and I do definitely prefer that technology. It's more like the way, it is the way, it's the exact way that flour used to be made. And I like that I can take it apart and clean it. You can't do that with the classic mill. If there's any problem with it inside, you can't take it apart and expect it. I don't know why I said expect. Inspect it. You have to send it back to the manufacturer if there's a problem, and they'll take it apart and fix it. But you can't do that yourself. Now, with the stone mill, like the Harvest mill is, you can literally just pop the bowl off, take the stones out, look at them, clean them off if there's any bit of wheat berries gunked on them. And I like that you can do that. Is that everything I wanted to tell you about the Harvest? I think so. So now I'm ready to tell you about the third one. I have a sweet friend who knew my obsession with fresh flour, and she too is obsessed with fresh flour. And out of the blue, she says to me, "Would you like to borrow my mill?" And at first, I thought it was a little odd because she knew I had 2 mills. I'm like, why do I need to borrow a mill? But she had remembered that when I had been to her home last, I had saw that she had a different mill than I did. She had a Mockmill Lino 100. And it's also a stone mill. It also, like the Harvest mill, is one that is, you make your flour on demand. The bowl is attached at the top and there's no extra equipment. So anyway, I had seen it and I went, "Oh, do you like your mill?" Because it's not like mine. I've kind of always wondered how it compares to mine. And we chatted about it for a minute and moved on with our day. And I hadn't thought about it again. So when she brought this up out of the blue, I was like, oh, that's right. You have a mock mill. Wow. Could I borrow it? Like, I got really excited because I thought I would love to know how it compares to my Harvest. Like, I'd like to try different things in both of them and see how they turn out because I'm weird like that. She's like, "Absolutely. I'll bring it this week and you can keep it for a week." And it's like, wow, cool. So that's how I discovered the mock mill. If it wasn't for Jenny, I never would have tried a mock mill. At least I don't think I would have. Um, I don't know anybody at that company. It's a German owned company and they do not have like a relationship with affiliates the way that Nutrimill does. They don't have somebody who works like Lauren directly with people like me and talks to you about, what kind of product might be something your audience might like and how they could work with you. They just don't. Like I said, they're a German company. They just don't do any of that. So I probably never would have even tried a mock mill. But Jenny's mock mill was life-changing. Okay, that's dramatic. That's dramatic because I had the 2 mills and they both work great. But all of a sudden, I had a desire after using Jenny's mill to never purchase flour again. You see, up until then, the 2 mills that I've been using, I don't know, they just didn't click with me. And I really don't know how to describe it other than that. And I know it sounds silly. I know it does, but I don't know how to describe it. I guess because the classic, I just kind of didn't like using because I had to get it out of my back hall. It was a little bit heavy. I had to cart it in, had to clean it afterwards. I just wasn't crazy about it, which is stupid. I know that it sounds like I'm whining. I don't mean to sound like a whiner. I'm just trying to be totally honest. And I'm trying to figure out in my head as I'm talking, why hadn't I totally fell in love with fresh flour and wanted to never buy it again? I don't know. But this is what I'm thinking as I'm talking to you. That one was just a little bit of a pain, so I wasn't in love with it. And the harvest, it just didn't give me the same results as the classic. Don't get me wrong, the flour is fine that comes out of it and it makes wonderful things, but I always felt like the classic gave me a better result. So I'm like, oh, do I want to go mill? Do I want to go drag that out and have to clean it? Or do I want to use the harvest? So I always had this little dilemma in the back of my mind that I never really like worked through and sat down and thought about in detail. I just, in the back of my mind was like, I'll just use, the King Arthur flour. So I don't know. I can't tell you anything more than that. I know it sounds silly, but with Jenny's, there was a couple things that were different. First of all, the manual, and maybe Nutrimill will change their manual. Maybe they even have a new manual that I haven't seen that has this. And if Lauren ever asks me, I'll tell her, Lauren, your manual needs to have this. The manual for the Mockmill had this really easy to read chart, and it told me exactly what setting to put my mill in order to make the different alternative flours. So I'd always wanted to make chickpea flour, but I didn't know if it would somehow hurt my other two mills, even though I have to check. I'm pretty sure the manual for the classic and the harvest, I'm pretty sure. I really should check that before I say it. I think that they both can mill the chickpea flour. If you sign up for my e-course, there's details in there. But I don't know. I just was leery of it because, like I told you, with the classic, if something got stuck in a chickpea, if you know, is also called a garbanzo bean, they're pretty big. And I thought, if it gets stuck in the classic, I can't take that baby apart. I'm going to have to ship that off to the factory. I didn't want to have to do that. And the harvest mill, I don't know why, and it might be me, but sometimes larger things like the chickpea get gunked up in there. And you can remedy it. You can take it apart. Like I said, you can clean your stones. But I just kind of didn't want to have to do that and have that hassle. So I had never tried to make chickpea flour. But Jenny's manual told me I not only could very easily, but gave me exact direction of as the setting on the mock mill that I would put it to get the right fineness of chickpea flour. So that got me really excited. So I actually got out all the different things that I had been wanting to make alternative flours with. And I recorded a YouTube video. I'll link that in the description of the show notes. And I'll also put that in the article. If you go look up the article about these three mills, I will link to this YouTube video I'm talking about. But I got them all out and instantly I started recording this YouTube video because I was so excited to see how is this going to do all these alternative flours and is it going to work well? So just that simple thing of the manual going into that detail made a big difference for me. But the other thing that made a big difference is the manual could do that because on the mock mill, there are literally numbers that go all around the rim underneath the bowl. And there's a little dot on the bowl that you can turn the bowl to be at the exact setting that you want it for your flour. Now, after I've gotten my own mock mill, I can tell you that it's very seldom I move it off of 0 because everything I want to be at the extra fine. So in the end, does it really matter? Probably not. But if you want to do a lot of alternative flours and you really like the great precision of being able to change that fineness, you can't get that with the classic or the harvest. You only can get that with the mock mill because it has that very definitive settings all around the bowl that you can set it exactly where you want it. So that was one reason that I knew I really liked the mock mill. Then my results that I was getting with my cookies, my breads, my cakes, everything, maybe it was in my mind, but I really felt were better. And I guess I should say it wasn't just me. My whole family agreed that the results were better with my flour that I was getting from the mock mill. I also like that the spout where the flour comes out is just a little bit, I should measure it to tell you how much, but just a little bit higher than the spout of the harvest mill. So I can fit larger bowls right up underneath, or I can fit my jar for my sourdough starter right up underneath that, mill my wheat berries right into my sourdough jar every day. And I don't have to worry about any added bowl that gets dirty that's involved in the process. So I really like that too. The negatives to the mock mill, I'm trying to think. I know the one negative. Do I have other negatives? I can only think of one negative. It is definitely the highest price point. I'm guessing part of that is because it is German made, so it's coming from overseas. I'm also guessing I'm going to get some slack from people for saying this maybe, but I'm wondering if the German engineering is just a little bit better, and that's why my final results are better, at least in the opinion of our family. So, do I still have the other two? Yes. um, but I haven't told you about buying it. All I told you about was borrowing Jenny's. So I gave Jenny's back to her. I had to. I couldn't keep it. I wanted to keep it. But I then spent, I believe, let's see, I think that was August. And I just got my Mockmill right now as the recording. I'm recording in March. I think I got my Mockmill about a month ago. So how long is that? 6 months or so? That I kind of just really debated, went back and forth because I was great with my Harvest and my Classic. They worked wonderfully. I was using them just fine. But the back of my mind just couldn't stop thinking about, should I get a Mockmill? Would that make things with fresh flour easier and better and improved? So I finally did it. I pushed the button and I bought a Mockmill. And I'm really happy that I did. I did have to save for it too. That's the other thing. That's another reason it took so long, is I wanted to save and put aside the money. So if you have the funds and you were asking me, Michelle, what mill should I get? Money's not an object. I would say Mockmill. But if you don't have the funds, you only have $300 that you've put aside for a mill, or if you're just starting out and you're like, I'm not sure I'm really going to want to do much fresh flour, but I want to try it, then I would absolutely recommend the Classic or the Harvest. And it's really up to you to choose between them depending on the differences and what fits your style better. Also, like I said earlier on, if you want to stick with this traditional idea that you have a lot of flour on hand that's stored in your cabinet, just like you probably do now, definitely go with the Classic, because it can do a huge amount at once and you can store it away and just pull out a cup at a time. So I hope that me telling you my story about these three mills has helped a little bit and not clouded the water too much, because I can't definitively tell you should get blank mill, because all three of them are great. If I had limited funds and was trying to decide which one, I think I'd go with the Harvest, honestly. My daughter, who is a huge baker, Kayla, spends as much time in the kitchen as I do. We're in there elbow to elbow often. She would answer that Classic, because before we ever experienced the Mockmill, we both were in different camps. She was always a hard fan of the Classic, and I was always a hard fan of the Harvest, because I wanted my flour on demand, and she wanted to have the really fine flour that she could do a lot at once. So there you have it. Right in the same kitchen, the same family, we would disagree which mill you should buy. But like I said, I hope that this is giving you something to think about and some things that you can compare in your mind to help you decide, if you are eventually in the market for a mill, what might be the right one for you. And like I said, I'll put all those things in the show notes, or you can you can search. Well, you could Google solely rested grain mill and get the resources like that too, or search on my website for grain mill. And I think that's everything. I could go on and on, because I love talking about this stuff. Except for, I think kombucha would always be number one fun thing that I do in my kitchen. The next one in line would absolutely be fresh flour. It's fun. It truly is, to use all the different wheat berries, experiment with slightly different combinations of different wheat berries, get the different flavor profiles, and know that the whole time I'm getting a whole array of different nutrients too, because I'm using all the different wheat berries. Our family is getting exposed to so many wonderful nutrients in our meals. So it makes me happy. So there you go. That is why a crazy lady has 3 grain mills. I hope that this was helpful. um, let's see, when is this coming out? I'm pretty sure that this is releasing the Monday before Easter. So this Friday's episode is going to be a special one in honor of Good Friday. It's going to be a mini episode as usual, but I hope you join me on Good Friday for that. And then we will be here the following Monday, which will be April 1st. We will have an episode that following week after Easter. So we're not taking an Easter break. So I hope that you join me for the upcoming episodes. We have some fun things coming up. And after that week, we will then take a few weeks break. I have so many guests that have reached out that wanted to come on the show that I need to organize and record with them. So we're going to take a few weeks break so I can get that all organized and get those guests in line on the calendar. And then we'll be back after that. So having said all that, I'm going to repeat, we will be back next week, the week after Easter. We will be here. And I will be here this Friday with a special Good Friday mini episode. So that's it. Thanks for listening, friends. Make sure you go to soulyrested.com/free, FREE, because you need to enter that gift away. And I'm looking at my notes because I'm pretty sure I had something else I had to tell you. I just now realized, the winner of our last book giveaway. That's what I didn't tell you. I knew I should look at my notes. So in episode 100, I promised a book giveaway and we drew our random winner today. That is Carrie Michael, Kari Michael. You get a copy of The Kindness of God by Nate Pickowitz. So Carrie Michael, reach out and we will get you your book. And by the way, there's still one more week to enter for a chance to win Stacey Lynn Harris's new cookbook, The Language of the South. It's an amazing cookbook. You want to enter to win this. It's fantastic. It's hardback. It's huge. It's fantastic recipes and just such good stories of Southern food. So to enter to win that, just go over, take a quick second, leave a review on Apple Podcast for this show. It doesn't have to be this episode, but just a random review of the show. And you will be entered to win. We'll announce that winner. Let me think. We'll announce that winner the last episode before we take our break. So April 4th, that Friday, the first Friday of April, we'll announce the winner of Stacey Lynn Harris's cookbook. So please go leave a review. And I love seeing your reviews. And it means the world to me. It helps so much with the algorithms of the podcast. And I greatly appreciate it. Okay, so thanks for listening, friends. And remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it's a good life.